Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of Little Acts of Kindness. This will be Part 18, Chapter 18, entitled Scouting the Competition. They arrived at the classroom, and Midoriya stood in front of the desk, shifting side to side a bit, biting his lip. Hisashi wondered what was troubling the little listener. The kid had seemed pretty excited to find out about his quirk. Well, it seems you do have a copy quirk. We'll have to update your quirk registry. You're not mad? Of course not. It's your quirk, Midoriya. Why would I be mad for you using your quirk? Hisashi let his grin turn mischievous. Plus, I know that Sho feels honored that you trust him. His husband huffed, but didn't try and deny it. Midoriya nodded hesitantly. So, you don't want me to sever it, so I don't use your quirk? No, you can use my quirk. In fact, I was going to say that this afternoon while the others are doing reflex training, I can give you a crash course in erasure. That way, if you do participate in the sports festival tomorrow, you won't have to rely on your bone-breaking quirk. Midoriya glanced at him. What about you? Hisashi smiled. Copy away, little listener, he said, giving a thumbs up and a bright smile. The kid gave a hesitant smile back. Hisashi nodded and took a more serious tone. Midoriya, I know that something happened in your past with your previous English teacher. That you had an even harder time being around me because of that. But you still gave me a chance, and I'm glad you did. You are a wonderful student. If you think you can trust me, then I would be honored. He wanted to see Midoriya use his quirk, because if the kid had his quirk, then Hisashi had succeeded in gaining the kid's trust. He would be able to better help Midoriya if the kid trusted him. Midoriya started to cry, but he was giving a wobbly smile, so Hisashi figured that he didn't hurt the kid's feelings or anything. After a minute or so, the kid came to a stop, wiping away the tears. Do you plan on telling your classmates about the details of your quirk? The little listener slowly shook his head. Just that it's a copy quirk that has a prerequisite before I can copy a quirk. You don't want them to know the trust requirement? No, I don't. What if they only wanted to be my friend for their quirk to be copied? Hisashi doubted that any of the kids would be like that. It was saddening to know that because of Midoriya's quirk giving him trust issues, he never was able to activate it before. That the trust issue likely didn't help Midoriya when it came to making friends. He looked at Midoriya, seeing that the kid still seemed distressed, something on his mind, yet the kid didn't speak up. After a few minutes, he became bored, as he never was good at sitting still for long periods of time, the only exception being when he was with Shota, which, while on that train of thought, Hisashi grinned as he walked to where Shota was sitting and started petting his husband's hair. Shota rolled his eyes at him for a moment before closing his eyes and letting him pet his hair. He watched, as Midoriya seemed to be watching, the boy amused by how Shota had melted into a puddle. Hisashi wondered if the kid would like his hair played with, something to see about later if the kid ever fully trusted him. They were silent for a few minutes before Hisashi started talking, saying whatever came to his mind. Neither Shota nor Midoriya said much, but he knew they were listening. Eventually, he had to leave as Ida and the other kids would soon start arriving. Nato scoffed, completely unimpressed with what he was seeing from Class A. He listened as the purple-haired kid from General Studies gave his declaration of war, and then Tetsu said his own piece, shouting at 1A to not make fools of themselves, which gave him the perfect opportunity to rile up Class 1A. It's a bit too late for that. Look at them all. They get attacked by villains, and the only one of them that actually fights back, he said, pointing to the injured kid. What? Did the rest of you run away and leave him to fight for himself or something? He smirked, tilting his head to the side. Or perhaps he is just a bad hero and got himself hurt from those minor villains. He looked at the various students of 1A. What, with the way that arrogant blonde was acting, though? I bet you purposely threw him at the villains as bait, he added, smirking in satisfaction as he saw how riled up the class got at that, protesting his words. His eyes drifted to the injured kid, and Nato fought back a wince. The injured 1A student's head was hanging down, but that did nothing to hide his trembling frame, or the way his stomach moved, indicating rapid breathing. Nor did it stop Nato from noticing tears hitting the ground. He may have gone too far. He huffed. He would have to apologize to the injured kid tomorrow, after the sports festival. Nato just wanted to rile them up, not actually act like a bully. Well, at least his goal had been achieved with the rest of the class. Nato noticed how Class 1A's homeroom teacher glared at the crowd, stepping forward. Shouldn't you students be doing some last-minute preparation instead of wasting time? The teacher questioned. The crowd started to disperse, and Nato walked off with them, sending one last glance into the room, seeing how the girl with the round face was trying to comfort the injured boy, yet he kept flinching away from her. He turned away. Nato went to the train station and made his way home. His parents greeted him, asking him how his day had been, and he told them, leaving out how his insults seemed to actually hurt the injured boy. "Dinner is still a little ways off. Why don't you go take a walk, clear your head?" his mom suggested. He nodded and headed out, started walking through the neighborhood. 30 minutes later, and he was passing by his old middle school, Yukigoka Junior High. He ignored it, kept walking on. Sure, the school hadn't been that bad, but it wasn't the best either. Nato turned around and started to make his way back home. He paused partway through his return home when he overheard someone say, "You worthless, quirkless bastard. My little brother told me that you somehow made it into UA. You really are delusional, aren't you?" Not... A voice stammered out, filled with fear. Nato shifted on his feet, heading towards the alleyway. What kind of hero would he be if he didn't help out a fellow student in his school? "Still so useless that you can't even speak right, Deku," a different voice said. He entered the alleyway and saw the injured boy surrounded by 3 older boys. "Oi! Who are you 3? Nato questioned, stepping in between them and the injured 1A student. "None of your business," one of the boys with dog-like ears spat. "Piss off." "No can do, see, I'm also a hero student at UA." "If you know Deku, then why the hell are you defending the quirkless bastard?" the white-haired boy who seemed like the leader of the 3 said. "Quirkless? If the rumor mill is to be believed, he has a powerful quirk," Nato responded, frowning confused at the boys. The green-haired 1A kid stayed behind him, shifting a bit on his crutches. "Powerful quirk, Deku? If that wimp had a quirk, then how come he never used it?" Late, 1A stammered out. "Speak clearly, Deku, or do we need to beat another lesson into you?" the leader of the bullies snarled. "Oh, do shut up. Clearly you are lacking the necessary brain cells to put 2 and 2 together. 1A kid was clearly implying that his quirk developed late," Nato replied bitingly. "Oi, 1A, do you know what their quirks are?" "Bone bullets, dog shifter, temporary paralysis," the boy answered quickly, even as the 3 boys lunged forward to attack. Nato dodged, slapping both the leader, who, with the white hair he was sure, the boy had the bone quirk, and the non-dog-eared boy who likely had the paralysis. Spinning, he activated the paralysis quirk and kicked the dog-eared boy. A yelp and the boy collapsed on the ground, paralyzed. "What the hell?" the other 2 questioned, staring at him. "That was my quirk!" Paralysis shouted, charging at him enraged. Nato sidestepped and once more used the paralysis quirk to freeze the boy. The final bully, though, kept his distance. The boy held out his hand in a gun motion, and out came a bullet, which grazed him. Nato hissed in pain and quickly dodged to the side. Nato's eyes widened when he saw the white-haired boy turn to the 1A kid, who he was no longer in front of. The kid's eyes went red, and his hair floated up in a way that reminded him of the history teacher. Hoping it was the same quirk, he charged towards Bullet Boy, who tried to use his quirk and failed. Nato punched him hard, once more using the paralysis quirk. He may have copied the bullet quirk, but that one was too dangerous to use on civilians, especially since, technically, he had been using his quirk illegally. "Come on, 1A, let's get you away from them," Nato said to the 1A kid. The green-haired boy nodded shakily in response, following him out of the alleyway. "Are you all right?" Nato asked. The kid just gave a nod, green eyes watching him warily. Nato huffed, well, since he was here. "Look, I was going to apologize when I saw you tomorrow, but I might as well do it now. I didn't mean to upset you. Well, not like that anyways. I just wanted to rile your class up." Why? Why did I want to rile your class up? Before Nato could start to answer, the 1A kid shook his head. Why, apologize? Nato frowned. "Because it's the right thing to do. And while I'm a jerk, I'm not an asshole." Oh. "So how long does that paralysis last?" 5 to 10 minutes. "Right. Well, I don't want those idiots to find you again and hurt you, so..." Nato cut off as his phone rang. "One moment," he said to the 1A kid who just nodded. He answered his phone. "Where are you?" "Out on my walk still," Nato answered. "Oh, you're usually back by now," his mom said. "Dinner's ready, so hurry back." "I will. I just gotta walk a classmate back to their house first." "Ooh, you're with a friend? Well, why don't you invite them over? If they don't need to be home, that is." "I'm not sure that's a good idea." "Nonsense. Go on and ask. I want to know if I should set a 4th plate." Nato looked at the 1A kid. My parents want to know if you want to come over, he said, giving a bit of an apologetic look. You can refuse if you want, or if your parents want you back home. The green-haired boy shrugged, looking nervous. I need an answer, 1A. The boy jerkily nodded his head. Okay. Nato saw the fear in the boy's eyes and huffed, realizing he had scared the boy. All right, I'll make sure to set a fourth plate, his mom said. The phone must have picked up Midoriya's response, even though Nato was sure the boy didn't actually want to come. The phone beeped, signaling his mom had ended the call. Well, seems like my mom's setting a place for you, but you don't have to come. I can explain the situation to her. I, I don't want to be rude. I think you have the right to be a bit rude, Nato said with a smirk. I know I would deserve it. The boy seemed to be thinking over something. I need to be more social. To try and overcome my anxiety, 1A said, and Nato should probably get the kid's name at some point. Who told you that? Hound Dog. Nato started to walk back towards his house, 1A following alongside him. I'm Monoma Nato, Class 1B student. Midoriya Izuku, 1A. Well, he had a name now. Maybe he could get a quirk. What's your quirk? Bonding. Mine's copy, Nato replied to his own question, seeing no harm in sharing that, as even if Midoriya knew, he wouldn't be able to know whatever quirks he had copied. Really? That's cool. Mine is a type of copy quirk as well, Midoriya spoke, an excited tone in his voice. Nato grinned, excited at the prospect of someone else with a copy quirk. You have a copy quirk? Was that where you were using Aizawa-sensei's erasure quirk? Midoriya nodded. I can only use quirks of those I've bonded with, and I can only bond with a limited amount of people, Midoriya shared, grinning brightly. Cool. I haven't met anyone else with a copy quirk. We must be fated rivals or something. The copy heroes of 1B and 1A, Nato declared, smirking. Midoriya shrinked in a bit as soon as the word rivals left his mouth. Nato huffed. Rivalries can be friendly. We would push each other to do better and get stronger. Rivals can be friends. Not exactly what he said, but close enough, and it was true anyways that rivals could be friends. Yep. So what do you say? Sure, Midoriya agreed after a minute or so of silence where the boy seemed to get lost in thought. Well, it looked like he had an actual rival in Class 1A, and not just the whole class, but Nato would actually have to help his rival with the whole speaking thing. The stuttering was getting old fast. Though Nato also knew that mentioning that wouldn't be good, as from what he saw, the bullies often bullied Midoriya about that. Before any more conversation could take place, Nato arrived at his home and paused. Just a heads up, my mom is a hugger. Midoriya grimaced a bit at that, most likely at the idea of being touched. With that being said, Nato opened the door, and the two walked inside. It was at that moment he realized he forgot to bandage his wound, and whispered a quiet, "Shit." All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 18 of Little Acts of Kindness. I like this chapter a lot. I love the fact that the author creates a fated rivalry / friendship here at this point that's starting off between Monoma and Izuku. I'm eager to hear your thoughts on it as well. And Chapter 19 will be up next. As always, thank you so much for listening.